G'day, and welcome to an unplanned video. I say unplanned because I made a bit of an impulse purchase a couple of hours ago, and I've just brought it back to the shed, having a look at it, and I thought, well, there's a few things there that need to be fixed, and they're worthy of having a video. So what is this unplanned purchase? It's this thing. This is a 14-inch wood bandsaw made by Universal. It's Taiwanese, and that's really about all I know about it at the moment. There are a few things that need some attention, so we'll have a look over the machine. When I looked at it at the seller's house, I was looking mainly at the frame and making sure that the frame was sound and there were no cracks in it. If I use a magnet, it's cast iron, so nice and solid. Looking at the motor, the date's been scratched out on the motor, but looking at that, I think I can just make out 1973. So that makes it, what, a 50-year-old machine? Quite possible. It's certainly looking a little bit worse for wear, but it's not too bad. It's not too bad. This is the worst part. That shouldn't be like that at all. Now, I should point out too, in fairness to the guy who sold it to me, this was like it when he got it, and a few other things too that you'll see. So he just used it. He's a woodworker. He just used it to cut bits of wood. I'm going to use it for wood, aluminium, and depending if I can gear it down, I might even use it for things like cast iron. We'll see about that one. That's something I'm still tossing up. First, let's have a look at the motor. This is it here. The scratched out date is down there. It's a 4-pole, 3/4 horse single phase motor, nothing terribly exciting about it. Made in Taiwan along with the machine, and so you can probably guess that if that date is correct, this machine has been made around about then too. It's a sheet metal frame cabinet, nothing too awful about that. It's reasonably solid stuff. One thing that wouldn't pass safety muster these days is the switch here, because it's got exposed wiring on the back here. So one thing I'll probably end up doing is making a cover for that. I should say that the stand isn't necessarily going to stay. I'm still trying to work out where to mount it, how to mount it, and all that sort of thing. So I may end up tossing this out. The other thing worth noting down here is this pulley. It's meant to be an A-series V-belt pulley, but as you can see, one flange is entirely gone, so the V-belt was actually running on the bottom of the pulley. That's not how they're meant to work. Apparently it never came off, and I saw the previous owner using it when I arrived to pick it up, so he hasn't had any problems with that. But that's one thing that I will be replacing, because it probably limits the amount of torque that can go up through the belt, and so why have a 3/4 horse motor if you're only using a quarter of that? As I said, when I first saw this machine, it was working, and seeing a machine working is always good because it reassures you that it does actually work. It hasn't got any hidden faults that stop it functioning. I've now taken the belt off here, and if you want to have a listen to this, that's noise from the motor. Right? It's completely disconnected from the belt. So that could be from some bearings. If it's a 50-year-old motor, maybe the bearings need to be replaced. It could just be that it's mounted on a thin sheet metal platform and is vibrating and making a bit of noise. So it might be, well, probably one of the things I want to do is change the bearings in the motor, but it might also be worthwhile putting some rubber washers underneath the motor mount there to try and take a little bit of that vibration out, and I've done that before quite successfully. Another one of the problems that's apparent now that I've put this thing back together again, because we took the guards off to put it in the car, is that you can see this gap here, and that's well, that wouldn't be allowed because you could get your fingers in there under modern safety rules. So I have to do some work on the guarding here. The wheels on this are cast aluminium, and once again they look quite all right. There's no cracks or bits missing out of them or anything like that. The rubber tire that the saw blade runs on doesn't seem to be, you know, cracked or anything like that, so that doesn't necessarily need replacing. Once again, bearings might do the bearings because they could be getting pretty tired by now. However, if you turn this thing over without any without the motor connected, there is a scraping noise. Now, part of that is the belt isn't tracking properly, and I'll show you the reason for that in a moment, but it could also be that this guard is bent, so that might need to be bent back that way. This guard here is for the blade, so you don't stick your hand in there. It's not fully wrapped around, which is probably something that these days you'd have to do, because, you know, you could stick your finger in there if you wanted to. I keep telling people when they ask me about machine safety, I say one of the first rules you learn, and you learn pretty darn quick, is don't stick your fingers near the sharp bits, the cutty bits, right? And so why your fingers would be there, I don't know, but it's something to think about. However, when this thing is adjusted up and down, and that's just a simple clamp on the back on this bit of hex rod, nothing wrong with that, all right? Down there, that's fine. That's still within the top guard. But when it's up here, right, it's running into the wheel, and that's about 135 millimeters. If I take this guard off, I can get another 15 millimeters worth of throat depth in there. So I think the front edge of this guard needs to be reshaped a little bit. Bring it down there, say, so that it'll do the right thing. I was fortunate enough to find an instruction manual on the internet for this machine too, and it has instructions for setting these things up, but these are sort of, what do you call them, wear blocks, friction blocks that guide the blade, and they need about a 5 thou gap between the blade and the block, and these are that looks like about a millimetre, maybe a millimetre and a half sort of gap in there, which is what, 60 thou. So one of the things that I'll be doing is bringing those in, and the ones on the bottom. There's a bearing here which does the back of the blade. It's feeling a little bit stiff, but you know, that could just be age. It's not feeling, you know, like it's ground out or anything like that. It could just be the grease is a bit iffy. So, you know, that's another bearing to think about replacing. As a general rule, I replace belts and bearings when I get a new to me bit of machinery, just because it's relatively easy to do, and it's a good way of just lifting performance a little bit. Down here, the bottom wheel is a similar condition to the top wheel. It's sound. It doesn't seem to have any cracks or anything like that. The tyre on there is reasonably good. These two hand wheels that do up on those studs, and that's what holds the guard on. And so that would be a no-no, because guards aren't meant to be able to be removed unless you have the proper tools. These have got a couple of cracks in them. If I can show you, you know, that there's a crack there. So these are probably going to have to be replaced, even though they've got a cute little elephant on the front. There is a guard missing here, I think. I think there's meant to be a panel that sits in here, covers this up so that when it's all running, you can't actually get access to the belt. Just be a thin bit of sheet metal, and the manual has got the shape that I'll be aiming for. So have to have a look at that. The next thing I want to do is actually take the blade off, because I want to see what the bearings are like here and on the bottom. Here's the saw with the blade off, and as you can see, this bottom bearing is pretty good. There's no binding there. There's no friction. It's just going on and on and on. That's all very nice. So, you know, there's a good chance that I don't have to replace the bearings. Now, this shaft goes through to the back where the drive pulley is. This is the guard that goes over that wheel, and you can see there's a rubbing spot. Now that could be that the guard is out of shape, right? But it's things like that you want to look for when you're inspecting a machine, just to see, okay, is something wearing where it shouldn't. The top wheel, unfortunately, different matter entirely. That's scraping on the guard here, so it looks like this guard has been potentially bent out of shape, so I'll need to come back. If I pull that off, I get, you know, reasonable movement out of it, but it certainly doesn't go as long as the one down there. So, you know, I'd say that, yes, I'll probably bias bearings for both of these wheels. This one will get replaced. That one I'll just hold on and see how that goes. This one is the elephant in the room. This is obviously a homemade fabrication to apply tension. So by screwing this screw, you're moving the spindle up and down, so that's stretching the blade. By turning this knob here, you're pivoting the spigot out from the saw, and that adjusts your tracking. So I think that the fact that the blade was rubbing on here suggests to me that the tracking was not behaving itself. This is a portion out of the manual that deals with this particular bracket, and just looking at the bits that have been left here and the bits that have gone, it looks like I've got that knob and that bit of studding, so there. I might have this, although this looks more like a knob from a chair, so I don't think I've got that one. Not sure what that is, probably a washer. Don't think I've got one of those, and that's just a bit of studding, so don't worry about that. What I am missing is this bracket here, this bracket here, and I'll show you why they're important in a moment. I do have the nut and I do have the spring. So all I need to make really is this bit and this bit. Looking at this fabricated bracket, it looks a little bit rough, but it's actually reasonably well made, and it shows the function. They've used a door hinge here rather than having a couple of pivot pins. But what's happening there is that, turn over this way, this knob in the nut is pushing that out. Okay, and so that is altering the track of the saw. Meanwhile, the piece of studding goes in here with a spring and a square nut, and what they're doing is they're providing some tension. That's sitting against the frame of the saw, and as the nut is wound up, there's more spring force going up here. Now on the original one there probably would have been a slot in there with some graduation, so you could see how much tension you're applying to the blade. That hasn't been done here because that does get tricky, but I'm going to try and recreate that system. So that's how the blade on these things is both tensioned and has the tracking adjusted. In terms of the overall saw, I need to make up a new bracket there, and I need to get a new pulley for the motor, and that'll get it functioning, right? After then, it's a matter of, okay, maybe make up a new base so I can store it more easily, because this one's on rubber stops, and something on wheels would be very nice. The other thing that I want to look at doing is about the speed this runs at. I don't know what speed it's running at. I've taken some measurements as I've taken it apart just to see what the ratios are, but I would really like to be able to get it low enough that I can do aluminium and possibly even cast iron or something like that. I don't have much call for that, but I'm making up some banjos at the moment, which could really use a decent saw. I was using the little saw that I've got, and it didn't quite cut the mustard. The blade kept coming off the wheels, the blades broke, all that sort of thing. I was pushing it too hard, and that's why I thought, well, I should probably get a better saw. This is the saw that's been superseded. It draws 2 amps rather than 3, so it's 2/3 the power. The throat depth here is only 12 as opposed to close to 14 inches for the newer saw, and I can get about 3 inches worth of material underneath the stock here. It's a 3-wheel saw. I regard it as quite a clever bit of design, because that's the motor there, and there's a tooth belt driving this wheel. But the outside of that belt is also the drive tyre for the blade. So that's an idler wheel. That's an idler wheel, although it's got the tension on it. And the drive comes from the belt which also has the blade. So I see that as quite a cunning sort of thing. Tensioning is for this belt is done via this, that screw there, and tensioning for the blade is done via this knob here. Other than that, you know, it's a perfectly workable saw. It's just too small. One other thing worth looking at is this belt. V-belts, the way they're meant to work is that the two sides of the V are meant to wedge into the groove on the pulley. This one, there was only one side, and so it was tracking on the bottom of the pulley, which wasn't an ideal situation. But also the jagged edge of the pulley was chewing into the belt. So you can see here, the belt's half disintegrated. Now, fortunately on belts, people put sizing information, and so you might be able to just make out here, this is A51, so it's an A series belt, it's 51 inches long, made by the Sanwoo company, who I'm assuming are Taiwanese as well. But based on that, I should be able to get a replacement belt for this reasonably easily. I'm not going to at the moment because I want to see what pulley I can get and what speed that what would you call it, the drive wheel is running at before I start doing anything like that. One option I'm thinking of is remaking the base and mounting the motor a little higher up, so I need a shorter belt, but that'll give me a little bit of storage space underneath. So to recap a little bit, I guess when inspecting a machine, you know, second-hand machine you want to buy, you want to look for cracks and things that are broken. You want to see it running if you can, and you also possibly want to listen for some noises and things like that. Having brought this home and stripped it down a little bit, I can say there's some bearings there that need to be replaced. The belt needs to be replaced. The wheels don't seem to be too bad. The pulley on the motor needs to be replaced, and I need to make up a replacement bracket for the belt tensioner because that one's not all that flash. I don't think it's really doing what it's meant to do. Thanks for watching. See you for the next one.